Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. I didn't give Elizabeth space because I stopped caring. I gave it because I believed love sometimes needed room to breathe. My name is James. I'm 38, work in logistics, predictable hours, predictable life. When Elizabeth and I married, people called us steady. Not passionate, not dramatic, just solid. For years, that felt like a compliment. Somewhere along the way, steady turned quiet. Quiet turned distant. She started saying she felt overwhelmed, crowded, like she never had time to think. I listened. I didn't argue. When she said she needed space, I didn't panic. I nodded and said okay. I thought that made me mature. I stopped asking questions that annoyed her. I stopped touching her unless she reached first. I started sleeping closer to the edge of the bed so she wouldn't feel smothered. When she stayed late at work, I didn't text. When she locked herself in the bathroom scrolling for an hour, I turned the TV down and waited. I told myself this was what respecting boundaries looked like. Weeks passed, then months. The space she wanted didn't bring us closer. It hollowed the house out. Conversations became logistical. Groceries, bills, appointments. She spoke to me the way people speak to co-workers they don't dislike, but don't particularly want to know either. One night, while we ate dinner in silence, she said, almost casually, that maybe we should take a break from trying. Not a breakup, just space. Again, I asked what that meant. She shrugged and said she didn't know, but she felt lighter when I wasn't around her emotionally. That sentence sat in my chest like a stone. I agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because arguing felt pointless. I moved into the guest room. I gave her the quiet she asked for. And something strange happened. Without the constant effort of proving I was patient, kind, understanding, I started noticing how alone I already was. If the story feels familiar so far, tap like so it reaches people who are quietly living the same silence. I started staying later at work, not to avoid her, but because no one noticed when I did. I went to the gym again. I slept better. The tension I'd been carrying eased, and that scared me more than the distance ever had. That's when I met Hannah. She worked in the office next to mine, marketing, sharp wit, calm confidence. We talked during coffee breaks at first. Nothing inappropriate, just conversation that flowed without effort. She asked questions and waited for the answers. When she laughed, it wasn't polite. It was genuine. One afternoon, she asked how my weekend was. I started to give the usual vague response, then stopped and told the truth. I said it was quiet. She nodded and said quiet could be peaceful or lonely depending on who you shared it with. That line followed me home. Elizabeth didn't notice when I came in late that night. She was already in bed, phone lighting up her face. I stood there for a moment, realizing I could disappear emotionally and nothing would change. That hurt, but it also clarified things. If you've ever realized you were already alone while still married, share this story with someone who might need that reminder. Over the next weeks, Hannah and I talked more. Not about love, about life, goals, regrets. She mentioned she left a long relationship where she felt invisible. I didn't comment. I understood. One evening, Elizabeth told me she appreciated how much space I was giving her. She said she finally felt calm at home. I smiled and told her I was glad. What I didn't say was that her calm came at the cost of my presence. That night, lying in the guest room, I admitted something I'd been avoiding. I wasn't waiting for her anymore. I was waiting for clarity. And for the first time, clarity didn't look like saving the marriage. It looked like acknowledging it had already changed beyond recognition. I needed to face that truth honestly, without excuses or borrowed hope. I didn't confront Elizabeth right away. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed to be honest with myself first. I had spent so long adapting to her needs that I forgot to check in with my own. The truth was simple and uncomfortable. I felt more seen during 10-minute conversations at work than I did sharing a house with my wife. Hannah never crossed a line. That mattered. She didn't flirt aggressively or ask invasive questions. She just existed in a way that made me feel present again. One afternoon, She mentioned grabbing coffee after work. I hesitated, then said yes. It felt harmless. It felt human. We sat in a small cafe near the office. Nothing fancy. We talked about books, about how expectations quietly ruin relationships, about how people confuse endurance with loyalty. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You don't sound like someone who's being chosen." She didn't say it with pity. She said it like an observation. It landed hard because it was accurate. That night, I went home and found Elizabeth packing a small bag. She said she was staying with her sister for a few days to clear her head. She smiled like this was progress. I asked her if she missed me. She paused, then said she missed a version of us that didn't require effort. That was her answer. When the door closed behind her, I didn't feel panic. I felt relief mixed with grief. Relief that I could finally stop guessing. Grief for the years I spent shrinking to make her comfortable. If you think relationships end long before the paperwork does, comment below and share your perspective so others can join the discussion. Over the next week, Elizabeth barely checked in. A text about mail. A reminder about a bill. Nothing else. In that silence, I made a decision I should have made sooner. I stopped waiting for her to decide whether I mattered. I asked Hannah to dinner. I was clear. I told her my situation wasn't resolved, but my marriage emotionally was already over. She listened. She said she appreciated the honesty and agreed cautiously. Dinner wasn't electric. It was easy. I laughed without thinking. I spoke without filtering myself. When I got home, Elizabeth had returned. She noticed immediately that something was different. Not my behavior, my posture, the way I wasn't hovering for her reaction anymore. She asked where I'd been. I told her I went out. She asked with who. I answered calmly. Her face tightened. She accused me of moving on too fast. I told her I had been alone for a long time, just not officially. She said I didn't fight hard enough. I told her I fought quietly for years. The argument never escalated. It didn't need to. The truth had already settled between us. 2 days later, she said we should separate formally. I agreed. No tears, no shouting, just acceptance. If this moment resonates with you, type the word clarity in the comments. Weeks passed. The separation paperwork moved forward. Hannah and I took things slowly. What surprised me most wasn't the connection, but the consistency. She showed up. She listened. She wanted me there. Not as an accessory, not as background noise, but as a person. Elizabeth eventually admitted she hadn't wanted space. She wanted comfort without responsibility. By then, it didn't matter. I didn't feel angry. I felt finished. Looking back, giving her space didn't cost me my marriage. It revealed the truth of it. And in that space, I found someone who didn't need distance to feel okay around me. If this story helped you reflect on your own situation, like this video, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories about boundaries, self-respect, and choosing yourself. Sometimes, losing what never truly chose you is how you make room for something that finally does.